Hello, you are watching West Bloomfield 911. I'm Officer Rick, and on behalf of Chief Michael Patton and the men and women of the West Bloomfield Police Department, welcome to the show. Before we go into our corner spotlight, a segment I hope all of you folks enjoy, I'm going to introduce our guest, a good friend, Pastor Tim Holzerland. Tim, how are you?
Good, doing well.
Good. Well, you just sit here, don't go running away, okay. And we're going to highlight a fellow officer. Well, in this case, it's not an officer, but a fellow employee, okay?
Great.
All right, folks, if you look up on your screen, we are talking today about a good friend of the community, dispatcher Becky Brousseau. Becky hired in 2007 as a cadet. She was promoted to dispatcher where she is today in 2009. She has served the West Bloomfield community for a total of 6 years. So Becky, we're glad to have you. Becky also is truly a woman of service because she has worked in some other capacities serving the area. She served as an intern for the Bloomfield Township Police Department, and she currently, while she's a dispatcher, she also serves part-time as a court deputy for the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. So Becky, thank you for all you do in law enforcement. And one thing some of you may not know, she is married to one of our officers, Officer Joe Brousseau, who we spotlighted on a previous show. So both Becky and Joe are dedicated to the community, and we thank you for everything you do. When I asked Becky what her favorite food was, she said without hesitation, steak. Becky, you're a woman after my own heart. When I asked her about books, she said she doesn't have a particular favorite, but she does enjoy love stories. Her favorite movie, Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, and I don't think that's a love story. Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, a 1995 comedy starring Jim Carrey. And when I asked her about music, she said without even blinking an eye, I like anything but opera. So you don't like those high sopranos, eh, Becky? Accomplishments and hobbies. She loves softball. She loves running with her dog and being on a lake. And if any of you know Becky, she's in great shape. And she's proud of completing the police academy. And we are proud of you for that as well. When I asked her about a favorite quote or a philosophical axiom, she said, "It's hard to wait around for something you know might never happen, but it's harder to give up when you know it's everything you want." You know, and I've never heard that. I like that one. And she didn't know where that quote came from, and I haven't been able to find that either. So, Becky, wonderful quote. We're glad you're with us. Keep up the good work, and I'll see you around the station. We're going to turn the corner spotlight off on Dispatcher Becky Brousseau. And today, folks, we're going to talk not a safety tip per se, but we're going to talk about a great problem, not just in the United States, but worldwide. We're talking about human trafficking. Let me give you a couple of statistics about human trafficking, this scourge on humanity. Globally, the average slave is only worth about $90. So when they say that human life is cheap, you now know it really is. $90 to buy a slave. The trafficking primarily involves exploitation of females, forcing them into prostitution, involuntary slavery or servitude, compelling them to commit sexual acts for the purposes of creating pornography, and they also mislead a lot of these victims into bondage. About 80% of trafficking is exploitation, sexual exploitation, 90% is labor. 20 to 30 million slaves worldwide. That's an embarrassment. That's a shame on all of us. And even in the United States, they figure about 600 to 800,000 people cross our borders every year into human trafficking and slavery. The average teen in the United States that becomes involved in human trafficking is 12 to 14 years old, is a female and a runaway, and they were sexually abused even as children in their own homes. California harbors 3 of the highest areas for sex trafficking in the country, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego. And the list goes on and on. It's pretty sad and pretty disgusting. And what this really boils down to, folks, is that you need to keep your eyes open. And if you suspect that someone is being held in servitude or bondage, please call your local police, or you can call Homeland Security at 800-347-2423. You can also call, if it involves children, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and their cyber tip line is 800-843-5678. We emancipated had emancipation in this country in the 1800s, and yet we still have slavery, and that's an embarrassment to us all. So please help us out. Folks, we'll be right back. Don't go away. We are going to come back with our very special guest, Chaplain Tim Holzerland of the West Bloomfield Fire Department. Don't go away.
You're watching West Bloomfield 911 on Civic Center TV, a service of the Greater West Bloomfield Cable Communications Commission. For more information or to watch episodes on demand, visit civiccentertv.com/WB911. Civic Center TV, television that's close to home.
The West Bloomfield Police Foundation raises money to help those who protect and serve the community. Whether it's emotional or financial support, the foundation provides a helping hand to officers, their families, and those in the community. For more information on the West Bloomfield Police Foundation, contact Kurt Lawson at 248-975-8900 or visit wbpolicefoundation.org.
We are back. Once again, we'd like to welcome our guest, Chaplain Tim Holzerland of the West Bloomfield Fire Department. Pastor Tim, good to see you.
Always good to see you.
You know, I remember that Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, retired from U.S. Army, once said that, and I agree with him in many ways, that being a police officer or a military personnel were two of the most important functions or jobs in our country, because we can't do without either one of those for the shortest period of time. Because if criminals all knew police quit, the country would run amok, and if our enemies knew that our military wasn't going to fight, of course, that would be dangerous as well. And I agree with them, but in a bigger picture, the most important job, I think, is serving God in whatever capacity or worship community one feels called. And you certainly have done that, because you actually had a degree initially in broadcasting. And that was from Wayne State College, not Wayne State University, folks. Wayne State College in Wayne, Nebraska.
Yeah.
But then you found a calling to serve the Lord, and you now are a minister.
Yeah. It happened in 1987, and I was at a television station in Southern Illinois, and I was kind of splitting time between the church and between the TV station. And so I worked in production. I directed TV shows. We did some marathons and other things like that. And then after that, I'd run to the church, and I'd lead Bible studies or work on boards or help out the pastor. And then one day, out of the blue, it seemed like the pastor came to me and said, "Tim, you spend a lot of time here. Have you ever considered becoming a pastor?" And I was like, no. But he was like, "I want you to consider it." And so he took me to one of our Lutheran seminaries that was nearby in St. Louis, and kind of walked me through the process. And I did a lot of praying on it, and I thought, yeah, I think I want to make that transition. And so our seminary program is a 4-year program, so I entered in at Sem 1, and I graduated in 1991, and then received my first church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Well, now you originally grew up, though, in Nebraska.
I grew up a lot of places along the Midwest. My mom and dad are Lutheran school teachers, and my dad is a principal, so we kind of go from school to school. So I spent some time there. I spent some time in Illinois. They had a school in a small town outside of Bay City called Munger.
Not Bay City, Michigan.
No, yeah, Bay City, Michigan.
Oh, Michigan.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. They had one out there. Okay. And so there are different places, and so I followed them around until I was out of college, and then then when I went to my first TV station, then then I finally would catch up with them wherever they were at. They retired in Missouri, outside of St. Louis. Yeah.
Right. Now, the thing that you certainly didn't come into the religious service for the money.
No.
Because I know, being a deacon in a Catholic church, and people say, "Well, how much do you get paid?" And I tell them I make twice as much this year as I did last year, because I didn't make anything last year. But it really is a calling. I mean, you have to feel it's not just a job.
Yeah, and in that 4 years, they test that calling. I mean, you think you're really called? So I was saying they kind of pile the workload on and expose you to many different areas of ministry. And I mean, they really test that, and not every guy who feels is called makes it through the 4 years. There's some of them feel they can't handle it academically. Other ones, in terms of the hours, they feel that that's not really for them. A lot of them, go into it for different reasons, and by the end of the 4 years, you kind of find out who really feels that they're called to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, when you your first church was in Pennsylvania.
In Pittsburgh,
which is a nice area. I like that
beautiful.
out there.
Yeah.
And then you came back to Michigan after that?
I did. I was there for 4 years, and then a church in Grosse Pointe, Christ the King, called me, and they came out to see me in Pennsylvania. They said, we'd like to include you in our staff. I'd be an assistant pastor, and then gradually become an associate pastor of that particular church, and I looked through the facility and the job requirements that they wanted me to fulfill, and I thought, this is a good match. And so my wife, Kim, and I, we moved to Grosse Pointe area, and we've been there ever since.
Okay. Well, at least maybe living, but now you came to pastor a different church, a little closer to our area here.
And then in 2007, I had been at Christ the King for 12 years, and as an associate pastor, and I just felt it was time to be on my own, either in a senior pastor capacity or as a sole pastor. And then at that particular time, Shepherd King on Middle Belt and Maple, they saw that I was looking, and so they gave me a call, and we had talked and met a couple, 2-3 times, and after that, then they extended a call to me, and then I accepted that one and came over on this side of town.
Found a home in West Bloomfield.
I did. I really did, yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you're here, because it's through your service at Shepherd King that you and I met. And, and it's been a great pleasure and honor for me to be able to call you friend.
Yeah, same here, yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks. But you wear many hats, not just in a pastor's capacity at Shepherd King, which I'm sure that keeps you busy in and of itself.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But you are now the president of the West Bloomfield Clergy Association, and you are here today representing the West Bloomfield Fire Department because you are their chaplain. And you and I went to the chaplain school together.
Yeah. So
why don't you, let's talk a little bit about both those. I guess let's talk about your position as chaplain for the fire department. And I want to let the folks know, because we will always be grateful to you. When Sergeant Patrick O'Rourke was killed in line of duty, I know that they had called you, and you and I met at the hospital where Patrick died, and you were very helpful to me and to Mrs. Amy O'Rourke and the rest of the family, so we are always certainly grateful to that. But you're the fire department chaplain. You weren't the police department chaplain. You really didn't have to come out, but that's not in your heart, and we are glad you did. So talk about what are your duties as fire department, even though probably the worst duty was for the police department. But talk about what do you do as a chaplain?
There's about 3 different areas of service, I guess I would put it into. One of them is I would go and meet with the guys, introduce myself. So I go to the 6 different stations that are in West Bloomfield, talk to different guys on the shifts, just to get to know them. They get to know me, and then I just interact with them. And so sometimes there's an event like a Christmas party or things along that line. I'm always available, make myself available for those activities. Other things I do is I go and visit people in the hospital. So there have been a couple of firefighters who had surgeries not connected with their service. That I would go in and see them. Our chief had a heart attack in October, and I went to visit him in the hospital.
Well, thank goodness he'll be okay.
No, he's doing great. So, so there's certain aspects that I'm called on. Would you at least make a call on this particular person? Not everybody who is in the hospital necessarily wants a call, so I just make contact with them. Some people wouldn't mind a visit, and so I go and visit them. And I've even visited one particular case, one of our firefighters who has a daughter who's had a terrible situation in New York, and they brought her back to Michigan, and I went and visited her in a hospital in Ann Arbor.
Is she doing okay now?
She's doing better.
Excellent.
She's home, and she's making some progress.
Good.
So that's another area of service, that I'm involved in. And then from time to time, the chief will call in the middle of the night, or I'll get a call from him and say, something tragic had happened, somebody had died, and then they want me on the scene, either to speak with people who are responding, firefighters or police or paramedics, or they want me to speak with family members.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the interesting thing about being chaplain, and that I think is that, for instance, your training is in the Christian faith, and specifically the Lutheran faith. But as a chaplain, you have to be open to not just Lutherans and Christians, but you have to be able to serve people of all faiths, communities, or people who have no faith at all.
Right.
So it's a different path.
Yeah,
just being a pastor of a Lutheran church.
Yeah. In some ways, I think it's really exciting. So, I get to meet all of these different people from different walks of life.
Right.
A lot of times, it's a cold call type of situation. I mean, you're just walking in. They don't know you. You don't know them. You introduce yourself and, begin the conversation and kind of see where that conversation, goes and how you'll be able to help in that situation. So in some ways it's kind of exciting because you get to help people at the worst possible moment. And when for me personally, when you have a peace that transcends all human understanding, you want to share that peace with somebody else. And it's very rewarding to go into that situation. So that's, I, get a great deal of satisfaction doing that. And it doesn't matter in any kind of capacity where that might take place or might happen, if it's somebody's home or if it's in a different house of worship, or if it's
we're all God's children.
Out by a lake or anything along that line.
Right. Now, in your capacity as pastor of Shepherd King, you are also the president of the West Bloomfield Clergy Association. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and how long your tenure is there? And
it's a 2-year service, and it's a group. I first came into it when I first came to Shepherd King. I've always been involved in interfaith or ecumenical groups since the time that I had my first church in Pittsburgh. They had a very active interfaith community that was there. The church at that time wanted to get me involved, and they actually kind of pushed me in that direction. But when I was in it, I really enjoyed it. Went to Grosse Pointe, did the same thing, kind of sought them out, and was in that group for 12 years. And then I came here, kind of asked if they had a, clergy community or, some sort of group to meet with, and found out about it. And I started 6 years ago. So in that process, then this past October or November, it's somewhere in that time frame, then they asked me, would you serve as president of the Clergy and Community Forum? And so I help facilitate the meetings that meet once a month, try to also communicate between the different areas, either the houses of worship or community centers, so that everybody can take advantage of all the activities that are taking place in West Bloomfield.
Right.
So those are kind of my main areas. Sometimes, depending on the time frame, you may be called to a different line of service, whatever that might be.
Right. And the Clergy Association, I know you were not the president at that time, but you were certainly very active, and we as a department were very, and I know the O'Rourke family was very grateful, because you guys got to, and I'm part of the Clergy Association as well, but you guys got together and put that prayer vigil for the O'Rourke family just 2 days after he had passed.
Yeah, that was Pastor Chris Richards.
Yeah. But I know you were there as well.
Yeah,
There's many religious leaders
Yeah,
were.
yeah.
And I know the family was very touched by that. We in the police department were very touched by it as well. It was a beautiful thing, and we were just amazed at the response. I mean, a ton of people showed up.
They did. I didn't. I got the call from Pastor Richards Monday afternoon, and I was with you in the hospital with Amy, and I didn't leave until 5 o'clock in the morning. So
It was a long night for us, so,
it was, and I was tired. So I went home and went to bed and tried to get some sleep, and then the phone rang, and it was Pastor, and he, and wanted me to be one of the speakers at that, and I didn't know what to think either. I said sure, and he told me where it was at, and when I came, then I saw all the vehicles and all the people start to gather, and said, wow, this is pretty amazing. Yeah,
well, again, we are thankful to the whole community for the outpouring of support, not just for the O'Rourke family, but towards the police department. And a lot of that came from the worship community, you and Chris, Pastor Chris, and all the rest, so we're very grateful for that. What is the future in chaplaincy? Do you see, for yourself, do you see yourself continuing just with West Bloomfield, or is that something you'd want to branch out, or it's like, one fire department and one police department's enough, plus my church?
Yeah, that's enough. The only time with other departments is I try to introduce myself to know the other chaplains that surround West Bloomfield. So I'm still kind of in a process of that. I've met a couple of chaplains from Oakland County, so that if something really, horrific took place,
get a little network together.
Yeah, right. And it happened over the summer when a young man drowned in Walnut Lake. I was there, and also a chaplain from Oakland County was there, and so we worked together on that particular tragedy. And so I want to know them before something happens, so that I just don't
have to make a cold call.
Right, and then we can divide our duties, or we can say, here's where people need us most, here, and then we can just go and do that. So that's probably what I do. In other communities. I try to, every year, have a little bit of continuing education. So, in 2009, you and I we were in the chaplaincy school and went through that particular training. In October of this year, I attended a critical incident stress management course.
And I've attended that before. It's a very good course.
Yeah, and received that certificate. So I'm just trying to build on my education as a chaplain, so I can serve West Bloomfield as best I can.
Well, Tim, we only have about a minute left, so what would you like to tell the folks out there as Chaplain Tim Holzerland of the West Bloomfield Fire Department, or Pastor Tim from Shepherd King? What would you like to tell the folks out there as far as, and I know we put an email address out there for you if people need to get a hold of you, but if there's something to tell the public and share with them, please feel free to do that.
As a chaplain, I'm available to the community. If people want information about chaplaincy, if they want to know more about what I do, they can certainly email and contact me. If they want to know more about the congregation that I serve and the things that we do in the community, I'm also available to answer any questions there. I try to make myself available to anyone who needs help, and that's why I'm here. It's where I really feel a strong calling, and why I want to be so open to the community and help in any way I can.
Well, and I can tell you folks, that's absolutely true. Tim is, when he says that, he means it. Tim, please don't leave. We want to highlight and remember a fallen officer. So folks, if you look on your screen, and please keep in your thoughts and your prayers Deputy Sheriff Frank Curran of the Delta County Sheriff's Office here in Michigan. He was killed in the line of duty June 20th, 1923. And again, to this fallen hero, we say, brother, we are sorry that your heroics got lost in the fog of history, but from this point forward, you will forever be remembered. Deputy Curran was shot and killed by an escapee from Marquette Prison. The inmate was serving a life sentence for murder. He had escaped 4 days earlier, and after he had seized a guard's revolver, along with a posse of more than 100 officers, Deputy Curran was searching a swamp near Maple Ridge when the suspect opened fire, killing him and wounding a state police lieutenant. The subject was shot and killed at a later time when he was located by another posse 4 days later. So to this great American hero, Deputy Sheriff Frank Curran of the Delta County Sheriff's Office, we say, brother, rest in peace. Your memory will not be forgotten. And folks, please remember him and the other officers from the Delta County Sheriff's Office in your thoughts and prayers. Folks, we want to once again thank our special guest, Pastor Tim Holzerland, chaplain of the West Bloomfield Fire Department. He's one of the great guys. We're blessed to have him, and we're thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Folks, please watch us on the telly, and if you can't catch us there, you can go to civiccentertv.com, and please take care of yourselves. Be safe. Watch out for each other, because tomorrow is promised to no one. I'm Officer Rick, and we'll see you again on West Bloomfield 911.